If you've ever watched my stream before, you know that I track my wins and losses. You may have also heard me talk about the things I do as part of my day job, or day jobs because I have more than one, but one of my primary duties for one of my day jobs is heavily involved with data, databases, analytics, and things like that. And so win tracking, deck tracking, etc. just kind of comes naturally to me because that's the kind of nerd that I am, I guess, is a good way to put it. I think that tracking your results is important so that you can improve upon them. Tracking your matchups are equally important just because you want to know what are good matchups, what are bad matchups. That might help you to understand why, and so on and so forth. So the tools that I would prefer to exist don't exist yet, so I've been trying to do some self-reporting and track it using a Google form that feeds a spreadsheet that has like some analytics built in. And since I'm frequently referencing them both on stream and or in Reddit posts I make, I decided that I wanted to share my setup with you guys. So this is going to be a video that kind of explains my current setup, and there will also be a link in the description to where you can then copy my setup and start using it yourself. And if I make any long-term changes in the future, I'll make sure to do like update videos just to let you know the changes I've made and why. But for now, hopefully you guys will enjoy this quick insight to how I am tracking my wins and losses and how I come up with the numbers that I do when I reference things on stream or on Reddit posts. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so at the heart of most of my data tracking is essentially the analytics setup. And this is like a quick example or a quick preview of ultimately what the analytics is going to look like when you start using the form that I've set up. So as you can see, there's an overall summary which begins here, and this will show you the deck that you are using, and then it'll show you your wins and losses against specific classes, which are then summarized in totals down here as well, along with win rates against certain matchups. You'll see win rates for each deck, right, totaled over here. Total win rates for, you know, whatever period it is that you are tracking for, along with total wins, total losses, total games played, and so on and so forth. Now, this overall summary here is for decks against classes. I also include an area for decks against archetypes. The archetypes that I include are aggro, mid-range, combo, control, and ramp. I know some people argue that combo is not a thing in this game. Some people argue that aggro and mid-range are the same. Some people think control and ramp are the same. This is built for the people who disagree and or have the widest view. So taking your personal settings aside, your personal judgments aside, there's a column for each, and whether you choose to use them or not is entirely up to you. It's self-reported. There's also, as we scroll down here, some analytics for if you are going first and if you're going second. So going first again by class, going second again by class, going first by archetype, second against archetype, so that you can also see whether or not there are any differences for, you know, if you have the Elixir of Magicka, Ring of Magicka as well. So, you know, we can finally, you know, hopefully put to bed whether one is better than the other, or if so, by how much, and so on and so forth. Now, again, it's going to be, in some cases, some pretty small sample sizes, so some of these things might look horrible. In my example for what we're looking at right here, you'll see Charge Crusader has a 0% win rate, but you'll also notice it only had 3 games played. So like with all things, data is good, but you have to know the story that it's telling and not just say like, well, gee, this thing never wins. Well, it only played 3 games, right? So you have to take into account sample size. You know, I would not trust this nearly as much as, say, Word Sorcerer here, which is, you know, currently rocking the 74% win rate, but that's across a much larger set of games, if you will. So you got to take everything into account when you're looking at this. Now, how do I get the stats into this? Well, it all starts with this Google form. And again, I'm going to show you how to recreate the setup, but this is going to be the quick walkthrough. So when I'm playing my games, when I'm streaming and or when I'm not streaming, because I track both times, I always have this form up. And it starts with some drop downs. And the first one is the deck that I'm playing, so I might pick like Ward Sorcerer. Then I decide if I'm going first or second based on that game. And then I choose the class that my opponent is playing. And then after I'm a few turns in, I have to make the self-reported conscious decision to decide what kind of deck I'm playing against. Again, there are no like hard set rules for this because these are all kind of a personal preference thing. As long as you are consistent, that's the important thing in your decisions, then your statistics will match, right? So just try to be consistent. So let's just pretend, I went second as Word Sorcerer. I'm playing against Crusader. It was an aggro Crusader because, let's be honest, what other kind is there? And then I record my win or my loss, and I would hit submit. Now, when you hit submit, this screen will then move to like a quick summary saying your form submission was successful, and you'll see a hyperlink that says submit another response. And then I'd simply click that, and it puts me right back on this page again, and I continue this for the next game, and the next game, and the next game. So, when I'm doing that, if we hop back over to my example data, right, there is a tab down here called Form Responses. And as you're doing that, it will fill out each of these per submission. So you can see the dates and times when you filled them out, and then you'll see the spots for your deck, opponent's class, deck type, turn order, game outcome. And everything in here feeds this analytics page, and it will auto-update automatically. Now, any one of these things that you click on, you'll see that I've got formulas that are set up, and this is how all of the auto calculations are done. And it's important, as I go through the walkthrough in the second part of this video, that you keep some of this stuff the same just so that it doesn't mess up your formulas. But that's essentially how I have it set up, is that this form will then feed these responses, which then feeds this analytics. Now, the last portion is there is a tab called Form Menus, and these are the things that we traditionally use to facilitate our drop-down menus. These drop-down menus come directly from this page. Now, deck types, again, you can alter it if you want. I suggest leaving all 5 in and then just not choosing the ones you don't want to use. Classes, again, unless we have new attributes added, you can just leave these the same. These are the same 10 classes that you would face. And then decks is an area that we will change, and again, I'll go over what kind of changes you would make and why when I cover how you set this up. So essentially, this tab feeds these drop-down menus, and then your responses feed this. Now, it's important to note that you'll see these little triangles here for drop-down menus on the first overall summary, but you don't see it on the others. That's because the choices that you make here are, again, based on things that exist in the form menus, and the first choice you make here will auto-populate through. So, for example, if I come in here and I choose Aggro Assassin because I know I have some data there, right? Aggro Assassin gets added. It gets added for each other area in the spreadsheet as well. And then all of the data also comes in. So you'll see, well, I played 7 games. Apparently I didn't do too well. But it also comes in for each of the spots. And then your win rates are color-coded. As you can tell, there's some conditional formatting done. It will stay blank. So for example, out of the 3 games we played on Charge Crusader, I did not go first, so this just appears empty. But everything auto-populates based on this first drop-down. Now, if I choose a deck that I have no games on, everything will still auto-populate, but you'll notice that the fields are all empty, which is also fine. So you can kind of pre-fill this out if you want. You can choose to only add them after you've had games added in, and so on and so forth. So, how do we add this form and this spreadsheet to your own Google Forms and get it active? Well, let's go ahead and cover that. So in the description of this video, there is going to be a link that takes you to this form. This is the shareable form. And when you get here, you're going to need to make a copy of this form so that you can edit it on your own. Some of these options are going to be grayed out, and you're going to see a thing that tells you that you are in view only mode. But if you go to File and then Make a Copy, you'll get a prompt to make your own copy of this spreadsheet. Go ahead, name it whatever you would like, and then choose to make a copy. And when you do so, it's going to make not only this sheet, but it's also going to make a copy of this form. Now, when you go to launch this form, it's actually going to launch in edit mode, so it's going to look like this. So you should have a copy of shareable form copy and a copy of shareable form copy in this format as well. And these are the two things you're going to need to get going. Now, you'll notice that this version of the form already has some options filled in, right? And that's because, again, if we come back to here, it's going to be based on the things that I have in this form menus area. Now, my shareable one's going to have some notes here as well, just to kind of help you remember. But the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to enter your own decks. Now, you can name them in whichever way makes the most sense to you. Based on if you want to match them to the name for what you have in the game, that's fine. If you want to name them by art type, that's fine. However you want to do it. But you want to go ahead and delete these, or maybe you want to leave them the same, who knows. But let's just say you say, I want mid-range archer, and I want ramp scout, and I want prophecy BM for battle mage, right? Again, you can name them whatever you want as long as you're consistent. Now, if I come over here and I scroll up, you'll notice that these do not match what is here. The way that I get these to match what is here is by using an add-on that's called Form Ranger. So right here, this is the icon for add-ons, and if I go ahead and I click this for Form Ranger, it'll launch. So the first time you launch Form Ranger, it may take some time to load. You may see it be empty for a bit, you may see it thinking for a bit, but eventually you will get a spot where some options pop up. So because it is coming from like a copy of a form, it's not going to be directly attached, or at least it shouldn't be directly attached to the copy of the sheet you made. It's pretty easy to walk through and reattach each of the menu options, and we're going to do that right now. If yours happens to come through and everything's already copied nice and clean, then congrats, you can skip this part of the video. But if you're like me and it's just a either an empty copy or it's not working correctly, then this is how you tie the menu options back to these options here. So first and foremost, you're going to fill out a list for each of your drop downs and populate it, right? So it starts with this your deck area. See your deck. We're going to populate the values from a list. It's going to ask us which sheet. So again, we want to pick the sheet that our copy is coming from. In this case, the shareable form copy. It's then going to ask us which tab and which column we want to use. So we want to use the form menus tab because that's where we typed our decks in. And then we want to select the column header of decks, and you'll notice these are the three that we have changed it to, so we know we're in the right spot. And we're going to go ahead and hit next. Asked to give a name, I always name it the same as whatever the header it was, just so that later I'm not confusing it. So we'll say save and populate the question. You'll notice now all of our options are here, and your deck is here, and you'll see it says your deck. So now if we go to turn order, right now, turn order is first and second. We can leave those. These are not generated from a list. These are hard set in the form. We can go to opponent's class. These are filled out, but we do want to tie those to, again, not your decks. That's the thing that we just created. So we want a new values list, which will, again, walk us through the same thing. So we pick the same sheet. We pick the same tab. Only this time, instead of decks, we pick classes. And you'll see that it matches, and then we want to name it classes and save and populate the question. The population will remain the same because it's the same as it was before, but at least now it's properly tied to it. And then the last thing is the opponent's deck type. There is also this for game outcome, but just like first or second, these are hard set in the form, so you don't have to do this from a list. But for opponent's deck type, populate values from a list. We don't want to choose classes or your decks. We want a new values list from our same copy sheet from our form menus. At this time we want deck types. Again, we'll see the 5. And if you want more than 5, you can feel free to add those as well if you want to be more granular. Make sure you name it so you don't confuse it with the other ones. And voila. Everything is now properly tied. Now, the last bits of information I want to cover when you're on the form preview area is you can have it auto repopulate questions on form submit. I always turn this on, and I also turn on the every hour. So what do these two things mean? This means that if I ever come in and I type in, let's say, ward sorcerer, right? You'll notice that the minute I type this in, if I come back here to my form, it is not here. But because of the auto repopulate questions, if I were to submit this form, I would then see ward sorcerer as a fourth option. And if I were to wait an hour, because this is every hour, in an hour it will also pop up on my list. Now, if I ever need, let's say I'm trying to track wins and losses from a brand new deck, and I'm going to start right now, and I'm not going to play different decks, so the on form submit does not help me, and the every hour does not help me because I'm going to start playing right now. So in other words, if you ever need to add a deck to your drop down menus and you do not want to wait for these two, the other option that you can do is you can fill it in here, and then when you launch your preview mode, launch Form Ranger so that it exists here, and simply hit refresh questions. This will do it right now. And so as you can see, ward sorcerer has been added. I can now properly track it. If I come over here and I refresh my page, you'll see that I have the 4 including ward sorcerer here now, and this is all working as intended. So how do you do the tracking? Well, you don't want to do it here in the edit mode, obviously, because you can't really pick from your drop downs. So when you launch the form, you're going to have some other options up here besides just the add-ons. You're also going to have this preview mode. So when I click on preview, it launches in a new tab, just like I had here, this list, right? This list of drop-down options and menus, and this is where you fill it out. So again, I could pick whatever my things were, fill it out, hit submit, and then it says your response has been recorded, submit another response, boom, I'm into tracking my next game. Oh, I played mid-range archer again, I went first, I played against aggro crusader, but I lost that game. Submit another response, boom. And so that's how you go. You just go to the preview version of the form, you track all of your games, and then as you fill it out, you will get form responses. You can see the 2 that I have here. And as long as you have a deck picked over here, it'll start auto-populating your analytics. So let's go ahead, since we know we just registered some for mid-range archer, and pick that. And you'll see now that, boom, everything gets filled out across all of my different areas. And we see my win rates, we see my win rates, and so on and so forth. We'll see nothing under going second because we said we went first in both matchups. And so that's how it starts to populate. Pretty easy, right? Now, when the end of a season or an end of a tracking period comes along, so I do mine by season, unless, so like for December I split my month in half because I did pre-Madhouse and post-Madhouse, but for the most part it's done once a season, and then if I want to do long-term comparisons I can. But when you are ready to reset this, I do have some instructions here on this tab, but essentially you come to the form responses and you select all of the rows that you want to remove. So in this case I select 3 and 4, and I simply delete these rows, delete rows 3 through 4. Now you might have 80, 100, 200 form responses, but you just delete them all. And then once you've done that, you can come back here, you can refill it out. So again, we'll pick archer first. These parts kind of don't matter. And we'll hit submit. And if we come back, you'll see it popped right back in here. Our analytics stay intact. Here's our one game, and so on and so forth. Now, it's important to note that they'll always be inserted here at this 3 row. This 2 row remains blank. This is by design. There are some formulas that exist on the analytics page that, for whatever reason, don't like it if you delete the top part of the range that you are measuring. So my advice, and again I include this in the instructions here, is to do not delete row 2 of the form responses tab. Just leave it always empty. So again, this will always be empty, and just select this through whatever row 34. Again, doesn't matter. Delete that, and then everything will always insert on 3. Your analytics formulas will remain intact. You will never have to make changes, and everything will work itself out. So that is how I do my deck tracking. That is how you get numbers about going first, numbers about going second. So again, this is like a quick sample. Numbers about your win rates with given decks or deck archetypes and what they're good against and what they're bad against. I really hope that you guys find this at least interesting or useful. Again, I'm sharing the link to the sheet in the description, and when you make a copy of this, it should auto make a copy of the form. Just follow the steps that I went through in the video, and then you too can also track your games. And I'm hoping that this means that people will have data at their fingertips so that they can understand things a little bit better as opposed to going off a gut feeling. Like a lot of times I see people say things like, all I ever see is, scout ramp, or all I ever see is aggro, or all I ever do is lose when I go first because the Ring of Magicka is overpowered. And I know that this game is very streaky and swingy, and some nights you might play against ramp scout 6 times, but when you really look at your long-term data, over the course of a month, or even a couple of weeks, it'll start to kind of flesh itself out. But you'd be surprised how often like the meta will change after a week or two. The decks I saw pre-Madhouse and post-Madhouse were wildly different, but anyway, seeing a larger sample size of data will let you hopefully come to some conclusions about what the meta actually looks like, as opposed to just like one night's worth of like weird streaky matchups or games. I mean, I've had nights where I've played the same person, not even the same deck type, literally like the same player 7 times, but that's obviously not reflective of the entire month or like the entire meta, right? So again, I hope you find it useful. I hope that it helps you make better informed decisions that help you to become a better player. I hope it makes you view the game in a new light, and you get some use out of it. So if you watched this far into the video, I appreciate you watching as always, and I hope to see you next time.